So unfortunately, it's a very sad story. When she was a little girl, her parents divorced and she went to live with her mother in another state, far across the country. She visited with her father a couple times a year and they exchanged regular telephone calls and cards, but it was never really enough. As the little girl grew, her father married again and their regular vacation visits were never quite the same. His new wife's expectations put a strain on what used to be their kicked back and relaxed visits. He no longer put her needs before others. As an adolescent girl, the father-daughter relationship became even more frayed, and the two continued to drift further and further apart. Many years later, she was a freshman in college. For the first time in her entire life, there was no December visit. And she would not even share her cell phone number with him. Needless to say, there was hurt and pain on both sides. This Shabbat's Torah portion captures an ancient tale of family pain and hurt, but comes full cycle with healing. It may well be one of the most emotionally captivating pieces of the Bible that we read. As we near the end of the book of Genesis, our portion opens with Judah's pleading on behalf of his brother. As a reminder of what led to this point in the Torah, Joseph, having been sold into slavery by his brothers, is ultimately taken to Egypt and becomes Pharaoh's #1 guy because of his uncanny ability to interpret dreams. Later, due to severe famine, Joseph's brothers come down to Egypt to get food per their father's directive. Having not seen Joseph in years, the brothers do not recognize him. Joseph accuses his brothers of spying, arrests and jails them, and plants a goblet on Benjamin, the youngest and only other child born to Jacob and Rachel. Once the cup is revealed, Joseph informs the brothers that he will allow all of them to return to their father except for Benjamin. This week's portion opens with Judah pleading for Benjamin's release based on the argument that if the boys return to their father Jacob without Benjamin, their father will die. Having held his tongue up to this point and treating his brothers harshly, Joseph orders all of his attendants to leave the area so he can be alone with his brothers. It is in this private space that he reveals his identity as their brother. What a dramatic moment. Torah tells us that his sobs were so loud that the Egyptians could hear outside the room. It was as if Joseph could no longer carry the burden. He could no longer contain his emotions. He could no longer continue to mistreat and scare his brothers, the very brothers who out of jealousy sold him and lied and schemed by saying that he had been eaten by a wild animal. He could no longer pretend to be someone other than himself. And he immediately says to them, "Don't be distressed or reproach yourselves for what you have done. I'm going to take care of you and your families. You will have plenty to eat even during the most severe famine." And with that, he embraces each of them, sobbing and kissing them. It's really unbelievable, dramatic and captivating and moving, and it must trigger the question in each one of us: could we have done the same thing? Are we capable of such reconciliation? Can we, after hurt and betrayal and abandonment, open our arms to those who have caused tremendous pain? As the narrative of this week's Torah portion beckons us at this season, as the secular year draws towards a close, it's a good time to reflect and consider our relationships, and especially consider the relationships that are strained or in disrepair. Could we be as forgiving as Joseph? Do we have what it takes to reconcile with friends and loved ones whom we've hurt and who have hurt and disappointed us? After careful study of this text, there are 3 ideas that may illuminate our path towards such ability. Number one, Joseph makes an end to the game playing. Many scholars have looked at this literary sequence and highlighted a tit-for-tat relationship of manipulation. First, the brothers mistreat Joseph, and he then follows by putting the screws to them. Each team, so to speak, makes life miserable for the other when given the chance, and this goes way beyond what could be considered normal sibling rivalry. But ultimately, it is Joseph who takes the step to stop the games. He does not allow his own plot to retain Benjamin to continue to its constructed end because he recognizes its consequence. And what about us? Do we play games with others? Do we keep tension and upset alive by playing out our role in the fight or misunderstanding? Do we, in spite of the sometimes severe consequences, maintain the struggle and fail to reveal who we are and what the battle is doing to us? Perhaps, like Joseph, we need to initiate a new behavior and put an end to the game playing. Number two, as I mentioned before, when Joseph is about to reveal his true identity to his brothers, he asks all of the attendants to leave them alone. Many commentators debate whether or not this was an intelligent decision, but whether or not it was a smart thing to do, it reveals a valuable message. Joseph does not air the family's dirty laundry in public, and they have a lot of dirty laundry. Remember, he's a high-ranking official under Pharaoh. It would be totally unprofessional for him to reveal the details of his family life and history in the presence of his attendants. He effectively keeps his cool and his family life private from his professional existence. But even more poignantly, it is the possibility that he sent the officials out in order to protect the privacy of his brothers. He did not want them to feel embarrassed or uncomfortable. Joseph's act of privately meeting with his brothers sets a great example for us. The Talmud teaches that causing someone to feel embarrassed is likened to killing them. Perhaps we, like Joseph, need to separate time and space to privately discuss our concerns with the appropriate party, to take our concerns individually and directly to somebody else who we have the conflict with. As hard as that can be, it is, of course, the healthiest first step. Like Joseph, we need to go to the source. Number three, in spite of Joseph being sold into slavery and the resultant jailing, he emerges very successful. One could easily argue that Joseph has it all: position, power, and money. But what he may not have may well spark the events of this parsha. Joseph lacks connection to his dearest ones, his family. All the other goodies he has amassed do not fill the hole that exists due to their physical and emotional separation. So it is when his brother Judah stands pleading before him and mentions the fragile state of their father that Joseph can no longer hide. He could no longer allow the distance to remain between them. He could no longer stand to be a part of their pain and anguish when he controlled the elements that could enable their comfort and even their life. Joseph effectively seized the moment of possibility. His need for connection to his family overruled the history of pain and betrayal and abandonment, and so can ours. Letting go and opening the possibility of reconciliation is not weak, but unbelievably courageous and strong. It does not mean forgetting the past, but emerging into the future in spite of it. It means recognizing that bonds with our family and friends and togetherness with those we care about are the most important and sacred. They are the best thing in our life, and that any argument or detail of wrong or right should be put aside. I would venture to say that each one of us, every one of us, carries some pain in our life from a hurt or wounded relationship where we felt mistreated, betrayed, or disrespected. While not every relationship is able to be saved, many of them are and deserve the energy that it takes, by putting the pieces back together. As I opened a few minutes ago, I shared a story about a damaged relationship between a girl and her dad. Sadly, it's a true story. And if that girl and her dad had stopped playing the game and went to the source of the conflict and opened up to the possibility of reconciling, maybe things would have changed. While it could never erase the past, it could help to pave a future with more peace and richness in one's life. And ultimately, none of this is simple. I do not stand before you as one who has mastered this task. And I am not so naive as to believe that all struggles can be cleared up through a private discussion. But the words of Torah, tonight's Parsha, is a marvelous example of how our tradition can speak to us right where we are, and oftentimes right when we need it. We, like Joseph and his family, struggled in relationships with those most connected to us. May we never give up. And like Joseph, may we find the strength and courage to ultimately reveal our true selves. Only then do we have the chance for reconciliation that can lead to greater love and peace and wholeness in our lives. Shabbat Shalom.